So today, omega-3s, why are they important? What are some of the FAQs, the most frequently asked questions about omega-3? And we're going to do some specific training on omega-3, on talking about areas that you may not be aware of. We want you to know why our omega-3 product is different than anybody else's omega-3 product on the market today. And I'm going to give you all the points that you need to explain this to virtually anyone that you come in contact with. So before I start through the sort of list of questions, and I'll just make sure that you know this, besides giving you a sort of play-by-play of the technical side of omega-3, but of course I'll put that in very, very simple language that anyone, regardless of their educational level or their knowledge of science, will be able to understand and tell others. But here are a few things that we will be talking about. We'll be talking about what essential fatty acids are. I'll talk to you a little bit about the 3 types of essential fatty acids for human beings, so 3, 6s, and 9s. Because that's one of the questions that comes up all the time. We'll be talking about why we used our source versus someone else's source, because those are questions that always come up with this product around the world. We'll be talking about milligrams. So is it having more milligrams that's important, as some companies have in their literature, or is purity more important? And did you even know that there was a purity question? Well, we'll talk about purity and why that's so important in this call as well. Well, before we do all that, we'll take a look at your label, because although all of you are able to talk with a person in any of our 26 countries and welcome them to your personal Manatech family in any of those 26 countries, and do be sure that when you do that, that you acquaint yourself with the rules of that country, because every country is different in terms of what they allow you to say. And you will even see, as you look at our product, you may have a product which is virtually identical to the US product, and yet your label appears different than the US label, or a label in, say, Taiwan appears different than the US, that sort of thing. So you want to be sure that you're familiar with that. Now, this is the Australasian training call, so I'll focus on your product primarily, but I do want to once again remind you that if you should be talking with people in other countries, that you need to be aware of their rules, because it is important that we protect everyone, that we protect you, that we protect the company, that we protect everyone involved by making sure that you always comply with the laws of whatever jurisdiction you are working in. Okay, enough of that. So, looking at your product, the way your label states and the claims that you have are different, and I have said a couple of times on this call that I sometimes have claim envy when I look at the labels in Australasia. Not always, but sometimes even extreme claim envy, I have to say. But versus what we're allowed to say in the United States, as an example. So your label indicates the approved claims by the Australian and New Zealand and Singaporean governments. We have may help to maintain heart, cardiovascular, and bone health. Now, this is a claim that we don't have, the bone health claim. That is certainly well documented when you look at omega-3 and D3, and particularly vitamin D, naturally. And we don't have that claim in every market, so that's very good that you have that. Vitamin D is crucially important to the health of your bones. In fact, if you are getting insufficient levels of vitamin D each day, your bones will, not might, but will become unhealthy. And vitamin D does a lot of other things as well. So that's only one of the things, but obviously that's a huge thing. And it's something that's talked about around the world virtually daily by somebody somewhere is talking about vitamin D and bone health, or just bone health by itself. Also, to maintain healthy brain function. Wow. Now, your label says in adults, and that's because the brain studies have all been done on adults. However, there are studies that indicate, which I'm going to talk about more in a few minutes, that even ladies who are pregnant need to have enough omega-3 for that little baby, or babies if there's more than one, that are growing inside of them, because it is crucial to the development of that child's brain and that child's eyes. I'll give you more details in a few moments. Now, you have the standard legal warning on your label, which says DHA intake by pregnant and lactating women may support visual and cognitive development in the fetus and nursing infant, and that is absolutely correct. So just when people say to me, how young can you use omega-3? Well, I think a fetus is about as young as you get. So I would say, yeah, you could really get down there. Now, how much do you give to a child versus how much do you give to an adult is a different question. And if the woman is pregnant or lactating, her body and the human body is just so darn amazing. I've been studying the human body for more than 40 years. The more I study it, the more amazed I am. I'm always finding new and amazing things about how our bodies function. It's so miraculous. So when mom swallows some omega-3, somehow her body knows how to take that nutrient and give just some of it to the fetus, some of it for herself and some to the fetus. And it knows how, when she's lactating, to give some of it to that developing baby who's now still obviously developing the brain. In fact, for the first 18 months of a child's life after birth, that 18 months is crucially important to having maximum brain function as an adult. And so few people seem to know that. So that first 18 months after birth is just huge. It's just amazingly important. So you don't want to neglect that. If you are going to if you're going to start a family, then ladies, you really need to be thinking about this. This is extremely, extremely important. You'll note on your label, it says ultra pure fish oil. Not pure, ultra pure. In fact, I'm going to talk a little bit more about it in the next few minutes, but our product is so incredibly, amazingly, astoundingly pure that we can actually legally call it ultra pure. Now that's important, and I'll come back to the purity idea, as I say, in a few moments. So you have a really good label down there in Australasia. I'm happy for you that you do. Not every country can smile as big with what they're permitted to put on their labels. So I just think that's fabulous for you guys. I love that. Okay, so to some of our points for the basic training today. And people will say, what the heck is an essential fatty acid? Well, first of all, let's start with the word essential. An essential nutrient, by scientific definition, is something that your body absolutely must have. If you don't have it, you will eventually get sick and you will eventually die. That's pretty essential. And it's also labeled essential if your body is unable to produce it by itself. In other words, you must take that nutrient to be called essential. You must take that nutrient by mouth, either from food or from a food supplement. That's the way it needs to work. So that's the definition of essential. For human beings, the most important of the fatty acid group is the omega-3. Now, for many, many years, naturopaths particularly, and I know that because I started my career as a naturopath, so I obviously have a lot of experience and training in that area. So for many, many years, naturopaths would always recommend omega-3, 6, and 9 combined in the same product. And a question that I get on a very regular basis from especially new associates around the world is, Why did we make a product with just omega-3? Why didn't we make a product with omega-6 and omega-9 as well? Well, that's a good question. What you need to understand, folks, is that something that was, common knowledge, regularly said, regularly recommended, etc., 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 50 years ago, may not be true today. And this is the case with omega-3, 6, and 9. I can't imagine a time when human beings would get enough omega-3 in their diet. I just can't imagine it, because I have been studying the human diet for decades, and it's not getting better. It's not getting better. Globally, what we're seeing in human blood tests is the same pattern, that the modern diet is not providing sufficient nutrition from diet alone. Our diet is not our ancestors' diets, and our life is not our ancestors' life. In this world, in the 21st century, stresses of many types are far greater today than they were even 50 years ago, 100 years ago, certainly centuries ago. Our bodies are adapted to having certain nutrients from certain foods in certain amounts to respond to certain functions. Now, I've made this analogy before, and I think it's a good one to remind everyone of. I always like to think of the human body as an organic machine. All machines require fuel. The more you stress a machine, the more fuel it burns. It's simple. It's really simple. If you have more stress on your organic machine, and you do because you live on planet Earth in the 21st century, than your ancestors had 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, then your machine needs more fuel. It's that simple. So I cannot envision a time or a circumstance where the population is going to get sufficient levels of omega-3. However, we do see now, by human scientific study, the very same blood studies that were testing for the levels of omega-3 were also doing tests. These very same scientists were doing tests on omega-6 and omega-9. And what did they find? They found that the overwhelming majority of the humans that they did blood tests on, more than 70%, were coming up short in omega-3. Not enough. But almost every human being they tested had too much omega-6. In fact, the average human being that they blood tested had between 10 times too much and as much as 30 times too much omega-6 in their blood. Now understand, omega-6 is absolutely necessary for your health. There's no question about that. But omega-6 is necessary in very tiny amounts, and omega-3 is necessary in huge amounts. Okay. Well, then why do we have this sort of reverse problem going on? Well, the reason is the people who started the low-fat craze back in 1948, yep, that's when it started, and now it has become it's one of those everybody knows things. Oh, everybody knows you should eat low fat. Well, everybody knows is not science. And the doctors who started all of that were not research scientists. Many of the studies done to support the idea of low fat were observational. They were not blood studies. Oops. Well, after a while, it became every medical school in the world was teaching low fat is the right way to go. And then the media, of course, gets that from their favorite medical doctor. They tell the public. Then the public thinks, well, everybody should eat low fat. And of course, their doctors are reinforced by it, and they reinforce it with their patients. So after a while, it's like, oh yeah, everybody knows. Sorry, folks, that's not science. Scientific studies, starting in 2009, and there's at least 15 scientific studies that I'm aware of, that have said the exact opposite. And you're going to see a trend in that direction as more and more doctors are made aware. But keep in mind, a doctor is a human being. There are so many hours in the day. I don't care how brilliant your favorite doctor is, there are still so many hours in the day, and no doctor can read every study that was ever published. There are millions and millions and millions of studies. So don't be mad at your doctor if he or she doesn't know, okay? Be charitable about this and help them by letting them know that there is new information that refutes low-fat dieting and does it pretty nicely. So what's happened is we have products all over the world where the trend was, let's replace anything from an animal and replace it with things only from vegetables. Well, I'm not generally opposed to that concept, except here it's really done us harm. So they've replaced fats and cholesterol with vegetable oil, which is high in omega-6, and that's the reason that people have too much omega-6 in their bloodstream now. Ridiculously high levels. Now, what happens with too much omega-6? First of all, it drives out some omega-3, which is bad. It increases inflammation in the body, which is really bad. And it can cause hormonal imbalances in women. And I think that's pretty bad too. So why don't we recommend an omega-3, 6, and 9? Well, you don't need any more 6. You just don't need it. Well, what about 9? 9 is not an essential fatty acid. Now, 9 is very important, and you will find 9, my favorite source, my personal favorite source of 9 is olive oil. In fact, if you ever sit down to have a meal with me, you'll see that I like to put olive oil on my salads, nothing else, just the olive oil. If you use even a tablespoon of olive oil per day, you have enough 9. You're okay. So that's why we don't do 3, 6, and 9. Okay? So that should put that one to bed, I hope forever. And we get asked all the time about our gel cap. One thing that just comes up all the time, what is your source? Now on your label, it says what the source is. Your label says anchovies and sardines. Well, actually, we go out of our way to use anchovies. And the reason that it has to say sardines on the label is sometimes sardines get caught with the anchovies. And so as we're processing them, there may be some of those involved as well. Anchovies are the ideal source of omega-3 for human beings. Now, I know you've heard about all kinds of things, and I'm going to address some of those other things for you, okay? You've heard about other things, and you'd say, well, this company says source A is better, source B is better. Folks, you want a source that has the right ratio of omega-3s. Not all fish have omega-3, believe it or not. Not all seafood does. Because omega-3 comes from something called chloroplasts. Now, green chloroplasts on the land are things like grass and leaves. Chloroplasts in the sea are called algae. Some fish eat algae, and some don't. Some fish that eat algae, and some don't. So you have some fish, some seafood, that has a significant amount of omega-3, and some fish that have virtually none. One example is a fish called tilapia, and I'm not sure if that's a common fish down there for you folks or not. Tilapia is very popular in Hawaii, as an example. And that fish contains no omega-3 at all. But it does contain omega-6. So I tell people, if you're going to enjoy some tilapia, make sure you take some Manatech omega-3 with D3 to supplement what you're not getting. The other issue with omega-3 from diet, of course, is heat. Omega-3 is very heat sensitive, very heat sensitive. And most people cook their seafood. Now, if you're eating at a sushi restaurant, that'll be different. or people in Japan and other East Asian cultures may eat a lot of raw seafood. But when you cook your seafood, you are going to denature the omega-3, the DHA and the EPA. So people say things, well, I eat a lot of salmon. Well, that's nice, but you're probably not getting much omega-3. There was a famous study done in a fishing village in Denmark. And this was, believe it or not, it was a memory study. And what they wanted to do, they tested only men above the ages of 90 years of age. They gave them memory tests, neuropsych tests. And these men, of course, they had been fishermen. Now they were retired, but they ate fish all the time. It was a fishing village, okay? And so what they wanted to do was to see what's the difference between giving an omega-3 dietary supplement or having these men eat even more fish than they normally eat. So they had the men triple their fish intake in one group, and in another group, they gave them an omega-3 product that was less pure than ours. And guess which one? The group that was taking the omega-3 dietary supplement. Now that tells you something about diet, and it tells you something about dietary supplement. Now our capsules, you can make capsules from different sources. You can make them from porcine or pig gelatin. You can make them from bovine or beef gelatin. There are capsules which are also made from fish gelatin. Now, Manatech made the decision that we would not use porcine gelatin at all. And the reason for that is not because it is less pure. By the time it's processed into a gelatin, it is pure and it is safe in terms of toxicity. But we are concerned about people's religions and their belief systems, and we want them to be able to take a product that will not violate their religious beliefs. We at Manatech think that's extremely important. So I just wanted you to have that particular piece of information as well. So you will find that most of Manatech's gel caps are made from bovine gelatin. The vast majority are. And especially if it's for soft gel type applications. So because we avoid the porcine, okay, or pig source. There's a natural lemon scent in it. People ask me, where does that come from? Lemons, okay, just so you know. I do get questions like that. It's just very interesting. Okay, and then we come to the purity. And I'm going to say this more than once during this morning's call. The purity of an omega-3 is the single most important factor. It's not the number of milligrams. First of all, you have to have the right ratio, which is what we have in each of our capsules. But it has to be pure because there are tremendous impurities in the waterways of the world today. And if your product isn't truly pure, and you'll actually be putting toxins into your customer's body. I challenge any company on this planet to show me a laboratory certificate to show me that their product is more pure than ours. I challenge everybody and anybody. I have not seen a product more pure than ours. The product that we buy, because we don't make it ourselves, we buy this from one of the world's leading manufacturer of oil products. And this particular product is the absolute top grade, most expensive omega-3 oil that they make. The company is called EPAX, so EPAX. Now, EPAX makes oil for anybody. I mean, they're a commercial concern. They'll make it from any source that you wish, and they will make in any grade, so therefore any price point that you wish. And I get all the time people will say things like, oh, well, I saw a capsule at the discount, or a bottle at the discount store that was 500 capsules for only $10. Well, You're getting some real junk in those capsules because we buy the very top grade oil that there is. In fact, the oil that we buy exclusively, we have an exclusive legal contract. They will not sell their top grade oil to anybody except Manatech. We are the only source in the world for you. It has more medical tests, more safety tests, more human tests, more purity tests than any other omega-3 oil on planet Earth. And you get it exclusively from Manatech because of our exclusive legal agreement with EPAX. Now, if you and I wanted to start our own company, and if we didn't care about people's health, we could contact EPAX and say, can you make us an oil that we could sell 500 caps for $10? Sure, of course they could. They could make some junk for us. They're a business. They just contract whatever they're asked to do. Okay? Don't blame them for that. So purity is the single most important factor. And our ultra pure product doesn't just meet the standards of the world's most important independent organizations. Our product exceeds the standards of the world's most independent international organizations. The European Union of Scientists. We surpass their standards. The Council for Responsible Nutrition. We surpass their standards. Global Organization for EPA and DHA. Again, they are completely independent. So none of these groups I'm mentioning to you owe any allegiance to anybody, have any financial connection to any of the people selling products. This is why their endorsements are so important. We surpass the Global Organization for EPA and DHA, their standards. We surpass the purity standards for the U.S. Pharmacopoeia. We are ultra pure. And again, I challenge any company to show me that they have an oil more pure than ours. Now, we've got some competitors out there, of course, and we will forever. And there'll probably be new competitors all the time. And one of our competitors, their sales pitch is, oh, well, if you don't put ethyl esters in the oil, then it won't be good and you can't absorb it. Well, there's a lot of sort of double talk here and mumbo jumbo going on with their sales pitch. Let me explain this to you. All fish oil has to go through, or krill oil or any kind of oil, has to go through a process called molecular distillation. These distillers have very, very tiny, very fine perforations for the distillation. If your oil isn't pure, it'll clog up the distillers. And of course, that makes it pretty tough to produce oil on a mass basis. So what our competitors do is one of two things. Either they use heat, and the heat makes the oil into a watery kind of viscosity, so it passes through the distillers easy. But of course, heat denatures the oil. Or they add ethyl esters. Now, fish don't come with ethyl esters. That's added to it, obviously. And why do they do that? To make it pass through the distillers easier. Now, if they were using an extremely pure oil to begin with, and if they did the method that we use enzymes. Enzymes do not denature the oil in any way, shape, or form. And our stuff passes right through the distillers without any issues at all because it's so pure. We don't use heat, we use enzymes. And I think that is hugely important in your presentation to virtually anybody you're talking to. Okay, now depending on what country you go to, and I've talked about brain health, and of course memory function is going to be part of that, and that's huge in today's world, of course. And I have talked to you a little bit about eye health. Now, you don't have an eye health claim, but I want to explain to you why you will find literature for the importance of omega-3 for the eye. Scientific study has shown us that in a healthy human being, the highest concentration of omega-3 is not found in the brain, where you'd expect it. It's not in the circulatory system, where you think about it. It's actually in the retina of the eye. Now, we know that for the development of healthy eyes as well as healthy brains, the fetus requires it and a nursing child requires it. And we also know that human beings of all ages require omega-3 for healthy eyes as well as healthy brains and cognitive function. When we say cognitive, I was doing a lecture yesterday, and in the Q&A period, a person said, would you explain cognitive? I don't know what that word means. And and I thought, gosh, sorry about that. I didn't think about that. So thought process, how you think, how your brain works when we say cognitive, okay? And so with this in mind, you're talking about supporting a healthy heart and supporting a healthy brain. Folks, if you don't have a healthy heart and a healthy brain, there's not much else to talk about, is there? I mean, why worry about the rest of it if you don't have those two things? You see a lot of association in scientific study and a lot of good scientific results that talk about blood lipids. And in fact, most medical heart associations in most countries will say the same thing, that you take omega-3 for heart health. And this is because omega-3 helps to break down lipids that are called triglycerides. They have different triglycerides because you have good triglycerides and you have bad triglycerides. Well, certainly you need the good ones for your health. The bad ones make up about 70%, give or take, of a cholesterol molecule. So this is how it gets associated with heart health. There are also hundreds of studies that talk about omega-3 and your body's natural production of anti-inflammatories, because omega-3 is a big part of that as well. Now, if you're talking to someone in the U.S., we are no longer allowed to say inflammatory, inflammation, or anti-inflammatory in the United States. You're still allowed to say it where you are right now, and that's why I'm passing this information on to you. But if you have a contact in the U.S., remember, we are not allowed to say inflammation, anti-inflammatory, etc. In the United States anymore. Very bizarre. Anyway, hundreds of studies on that, and that's all by itself pretty darn interesting and pretty darn important. Now, I mentioned our source, and I'm asked about this all the time, and I'm especially asked this by vegans and vegetarians. And folks, God bless all of you vegans and vegetarians. And I mean that sincerely. I'm not being sarcastic. I love the fact that you are so true to your beliefs and that you're so hardcore about your beliefs. I really respect that. But I have to disappoint you with this product. The most efficient way to deliver omega-3 to a human being is to deliver it in the form of omega-3. The problem with using a plant source, and flaxseed oil as an example, is very common. Flaxseed oil has omega-3 in the form of ALA. Human beings require omega-3 in the form of EPA and DHA. That's the form that you find it naturally occurring in animals, and virtually all animals, by the way. So we're taking ours from anchovy, but all animals have omega-3. If you sit down to eat a steak or, just name something from an animal, I suppose, and there'll be some amount of omega-3. Now, depending on how much that meat was heated, there may not be any omega-3 that's going to do you much good, okay, because it may be totally denatured. Human beings can convert ALA, that's omega-3 in flax or borage or other plant sources. They can convert, but the conversion is very poor. It's very inefficient, which indicates that the body was not designed to get it that way. The amount of plant source omega that you have to take to get the colossal amount of omega-3 that we need today It's just too much. It's too ridiculous. So we chose anchovies because, number one, they already have the correct ratio. That's the ratio that appears on your labels. So this much EPA to that much DHA. So we don't have to do any additional processing. The more you process a nutrient, the more likely you are to denature it or damage it. And we don't want to do that. So that's the first reason we chose anchovies. Secondly, anchovies are absolutely saturated. They are so oily. Those little guys just absolutely drip oil. And we can process almost the entire fish. And of course, we're also, and especially I am, for those of you who've read my book, Toxic Planet, very, very keen on the environment. I don't want to get into it all that, but the point is, the environment is very, very important that we live in. And we don't want to use a source that we might force into extinction. Now, I don't know what kind of stories you have down there in Australasia, but I can tell you off the coast of the United States now, there are numerous species of fish that are now extinct. They've been literally fished out by commercial fishing corporations. And because no one was thinking, they just weren't using their head. They were all being motivated by greed. And we don't want to fish a source that's going to interrupt the ecology of the planet or be in danger of extinction. Well, I can tell you for sure that anchovies are in absolutely no danger of extinction. Those little guys and gals breed with reckless abandon. I mean, when a school of anchovy passes through the sea, it literally blackens out the sunlight. And the sea actually goes black because their schools are so thick. So they are in no way in danger of going extinct. Now, there are other creatures, such as krill, where it could be a possibility of overfishing them. And of course, there are other species of fish which already have been made extinct by overfishing. So it certainly could be done, especially the larger fish. So with this in mind, we've chose anchovies. And that's why we made the decision. And for those of you who are vegans and vegetarians, I'm very sorry. Manatech will not be making a vegan vegetarian source for you. Okay, I'm sorry. But for everyone else on the planet, this is the product we want you to use. And I say everyone else on the planet, we go back to what I said about religion a few moments ago. One of the questions I've been asked a lot since one company started pushing their krill oil. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen a krill. They're ugly little things. I mean, in fact, they're kind of creepy things. If you were to take one, I mean, you could use it in a horror movie, right? If you blew it up as a big creature to take over the world kind of thing. I mean, they really are ugly looking and kind of scary looking, really kind of creepy looking. So krill certainly have omega, and the sales pitch by the companies that sell krill oil, their pitch is, it's absorbed faster, that's why it's better. Well, first of all, there are no studies to prove that. As a scientist, that's a fundamental problem for me. No studies to prove it. So for me, don't make a claim if there's not a study to support the claim. That's pretty simple, okay? But oh yes, different form of EPA, DHA, so absorbed faster. All right. Let's say for a moment, let's say that there was proof, and there isn't, but let's say there was, that krill oil absorbed into your body 20 minutes faster than anchovy oil. What difference would it make? Now, I want you to think about this for a minute. Be logical for a moment. This is not like taking aspirin, okay? This is something that various systems of your body, including your brain and your eyes and your heart, various systems of your body need 24 hours a day. You're not taking this as a painkiller. So what difference would it make? if it was absorbed 20 minutes faster. It's completely irrelevant. Is the function the same? As far as I know, the function is the same. The studies on krill have been limited, whereas the study on fish oil are, oh my God, there's so many. I just couldn't possibly read them all. So, more than 2 billion, that's billion with a B, more than 2 billion of the 7.5 billion people on planet Earth belong to one of 3 religions that follow the book of Leviticus, and I'll quote it as I understand it from the Christian Bible. But it was originally written in the Hebrew Bible, and it is used in that form in the Muslim Quran. And what it says in Leviticus, and listen, I'm not a theologian, so don't hold me to this if I say this the wrong way, okay? I'm a science guy. But I think I'm pretty sure that it's in Leviticus 9:11, I think, or 11:9. I sometimes get that reversed. Anyway, you'll find it if you look it up. And what you'll see is it says, it is an abomination unto God to consume something from the sea which does not have fins and scales. Folks, fish have fins and scales. Krill do not. Which means that there's more than 2 billion people following religious doctrine who could not use our oil if we made it from krill. I care about every human being on this planet. I don't care what your religion is. I don't care what country you come from. I don't care what your race or your language or your belief systems are. I want to help you with your health. And that means I can't make you an oil from krill. So that's the last thing I'm going to say about krill oil. We're just not going to have that discussion anymore. All right, so with this in mind now, we come back to the idea of certification and purification. And I think I've made it pretty clear to you, but I'm going to give you a little bit of extra besides what I've told you about the independent standards, which we clearly surpass. And by the way, nobody has tougher standards than the European Union scientists. They are really tough to please when it comes to virtually anything, but especially fish oil. All right, so there's an independent organization. They're called Frost and Sullivan. Every year, they give out awards in various different categories. So not just the one I'm about to talk about, but lots of different categories. And in the year 2012, they looked at fish oils. And they gave their award to EPAX, that is the company that makes our oil. But they gave that award to EPAX for one specific product, not for the whole company, but for one product, which happens to be the product that we have exclusive rights to. Their words, EPAX abides by the strictest norms, right from choosing the raw material to final delivery, and they consistently deliver products with the best purity profile in the industry. So, purity is incredibly important, unbelievably important. And anyone who asks you about it, because every company is going to say the same thing. Oh yeah, we go through molecular distillation. Yeah, we're just the same as Manatech. No, you're not, because we have exclusive rights to the purest oil on this planet. Let me say that a different way, because legal gets all messed up when I say it that way. So I retract that and I'll say it this way. Of all the purity profiles I've seen on this planet, I've not seen a purer oil. And I challenge any company to show me one better. How's that? All right, so EPA is a long chain fatty acid, and you need it for a number of functions in your body. DHA, another long-term fatty acid that you need for a whole bunch of other functions in your body. Now, we talked a little bit about memory, and I want to go back to that very quickly. And I want all of you to think about this, because some of you may not be aware of it. Some of you may be aware, but you haven't thought about it recently. Well, I want to bring it to your attention now. The second largest population group on planet Earth are people who in many countries are called baby boomers. And that means that these people were born, because I don't know if you say it that way in Australasia or not, but that means that these people were born between 1946 and 1964. All of these people, the entire group, are now at an age where by scientific study, they are all, even if they're not aware of it, they are all experiencing normal age-related memory decline. Now, I'm not talking about a disease, normal age-related. Everyone over 50 begins to experience that, and the farther that you get beyond 50, the more that decline becomes apparent. And that's separate from any diseases. This is just normal age-related decline. The people who hold the most money on planet Earth are also the baby boomers, the most money per capita. The people who buy the most dietary supplements on planet Earth are the baby boomers, especially female baby boomers. They're the majority of the buyers of dietary supplements on the whole planet. So if you haven't talked to a friend who is over the age of 50 about that normal age-related decline in both cognitive and memory function, well, maybe you need to have a chat with them. And one of the big parts of that chat is going to be EPA and DHA in the purest possible source and in the right ratios. One of the FAQs that I get all the time is about vitamin E in our fish oil product. Now, in some countries we have to list it, in some countries we don't. It's different rules, different countries. And in the countries where it's listed, I get asked the question, why do we have less vitamin E in our fish oil than these other companies do? It's because vitamin E is there for only one purpose. It's there to prevent the oil from going rancid. The more pure the oil is, the less likely it is to go rancid. Why do we have less vitamin E in our capsules than any of our competitors? Because our oil is so pure. And the vitamin E has nothing to do with function. It has to do with preservation to make sure that the oil doesn't go rancid. That's all it's about. So, it's amazing what people identify with. Well, why don't we have thousands of units of vitamin D in our omega-3 product? Because it's an omega-3 product, it's not a vitamin D product. And because at this point in time, there are so many people getting blood tested for vitamin D, coming up with so many different levels of deficiency, but really huge percentages of people are coming up deficient. We couldn't possibly predict the amount necessary and squeeze it into this capsule. We want that capsule to be filled with fish oil because we want you to have the omega-3 that you need. That's the purpose of this capsule. Why have we added vitamin D? It's the perfect complement. It works so well together. And those of you who, by the way, are having vitamin D issues, you need to make sure that you get the appropriate blood test and that you need to make sure that you are taking sufficient, and that could be, for some people, even thousands of units of vitamin D. Interesting, I've been doing a lot of study recently on a mineral called magnesium. Most people think that magnesium, when you say it, they think, well, calcium, right? Well, it's a lot bigger than that. In fact, magnesium is responsible, just to give you a little extra bit of information here this morning, is responsible for more than 600 functions in the body. So it's a lot more than calcium. And studies in the U.S. right now, and we don't have studies all over the world, but in the U.S. we're coming up with about 50% of Americans are deficient in magnesium. You cannot actually absorb vitamin D unless magnesium is present. You can't even fully complete your conversion of vitamin D from sunlight unless magnesium is present. I believe, based on my observations and based on blood tests that I'm aware of, that the level is probably higher than 50%. But 50% is the statistic we'll go with. Even so, if 50% of people are not getting sufficient magnesium, and you need magnesium to absorb vitamin D, might that not explain why a lot of people are deficient in vitamin D? And so that's just something I know that wasn't part of this morning's lecture, but I just wanted to throw that your way. And it's another reason why I put so much magnesium in your Catalyst multiple vitamin product. The old product that we had down there in Australasia, the Phytomatrix product, it only had 5 milligrams of magnesium. And you really need hundreds of milligrams of magnesium. So one of the reasons that Catalyst is such a great product for you as your daily multi virtually on any program we're talking about, but certainly specifically to that program. So going back, once again, I want to harken back to purity because I know I've said it a few times, but I just want to make sure this is clear for everybody. It should be obvious, right? Fish swim in the sea. Unfortunately, humans dump things in the sea. It just makes me sick. Do you know that by the year 2050, the weight of plastic in the oceans is going to be heavier than the weight of fish in the oceans? Oh my God. Well, that's a whole different lecture. The point here is the amount of contaminants in the sea increases literally every day. And you want the purest possible oil you can swallow. This is why, my friends, you need to be strongly thinking, number one, about taking omega-3 every day. And number two, that you are taking the purest omega-3 that you can find. And I know of no oil which is more pure than our omega-3 with D3 product. So I'm going to wrap at this point and turn this back over to our dear friend Sharon. And Sharon?
Dr. Nugent, I'm here. We do have a few questions for the last few minutes, if that's okay.
Sure.
A question, are you aware of tinned fish? Is that also heat treated?
Say that again, please. Tinned
fish. Is that also heat treated as far as you know?
Tinned. Oh, tinned. Canned, right. Okay. Yeah, we're a people separated by a common language.
It's English and English.
Yeah. I was saying to somebody the other day that I speak 3 languages. That includes Canadian.
You're going to have to add Australian now.
Yeah, now I'm going to have to add Australian and New Zealand as languages I speak. Okay. Tinned fish should not have too much heat involved in the processing. Okay, there's going to be some heat when the seal is made by the machine on top of the can, but it should be minimal.
Perfect. And another question, one of our listeners today has heard about DPA, is wondering if you could expand on that a little bit for her.
DPA?
Yes.
I'm not familiar.
Okay. She might type that as we're continuing. And what about for people with gallbladder challenges that have difficulty digesting oil?
Yeah, that can be a problem, in which case I would recommend an enzyme product. So I know that you do not have GI-Zyme available to you in Australasia. I'm very sorry that you don't. Some kind of
so am I.
TGA regulation down there. I'm not sure what that regulation is, but anyone can go to the health food store and buy a digestive enzyme that contains lipase. So lipase is the enzyme that breaks down lipids or fats. And if you take that in advance of your omega-3, you should be doing pretty well. Now, the other thing is that because our oil is more pure than the average fish oil product, some fish oil products, in fact, most of them, just kind of make you burp. They kind of make you sort of kick back the fish oil. Most people, and I won't say 100%, but most people don't experience that with our oil because of its purity.
Excellent. And is it easier do you think, to digest a fish oil supplement as opposed to getting omega-3 from your food?
Well, it's certainly, it's in most cases, it's going to be far more efficient, which is why I talked about that study which was done in Denmark, where they found a very clear difference among the men who were between the ages of, it was a 5-year study. They started when they were 90 and ended when they were 95. Okay, so and what they found was that the increase in the benefits from omega-3, as well as the amount of omega-3 detectable in their bloodstream, was higher among those who were doing the fish oil product versus increasing their fish consumption.
Okay, excellent. A couple more. Omega-3 if you're on blood pressure tablets?
Omega-3 in some individuals, and this is not consistent. In some individuals, you will find that omega-3 can thin their blood. In thinning the blood in some individuals, that may lower their blood pressure. Not everybody's blood pressure is high because their blood viscosity is too thick. Some people have high blood pressure for a number of other reasons that have nothing to do with blood viscosity and literally have nothing to do with their plumbing. Okay, so clogged arteries and all that. Some people have high blood pressure due to a particular enzyme problem. Some people have a high blood pressure due to a kidney hormone problem, and the list goes on. So this is not a sort of across the board thing where I can say it's always going to be this way. Okay, but I think that most people are not going to experience a problem. But if they had a problem, the problem would be the blood pressure dropping a little bit more versus having it go up for sure.
Okay, perfect. And the DPA is a newly recognized omega-3 fatty acid. It says it's structurally similar to EPA, but more carbon chain units. Is that something that you've had time to take a look into at all?
No, I've actually been busy working on some other products for Manatech, but I'll surely take a look at that. And you know, it's interesting. Years ago, when we used to have cruises all the time in North America, oh boy, I've had enough cruises to last me for 2 lifetimes. And I was on a cruise with our former medical director, Dr. McDaniel, and he came up to me and he whispered to me. He said, "Steve, do the associates ever ask you about things you never heard of?" And I just laughed and I said, "Of course. None of us can possibly read all the studies out there. It's humanly impossible. You know, we all try and keep up, but you can only do so much." So I'll look that up.
Perfect. And then a final question. So on speaking about your comment that, you know, the vitamin D in omega may not be enough for everybody, where else would they get it? From Catalyst, or would you recommend something else?
Well, certainly you have it in Catalyst as well. But I recommend the blood test because the blood test is so easy and readily available now. Everyone should be tested, but this is a caution. And of course, as a nurse, you would know this, but I want everybody to hear this. This is very, very important. Doctors are taught in medical school, and again, don't be mad at your doctor if he or she doesn't know this, okay? Don't be mad at him. So, and just treat them with respect because they can't know everything. They're humans, okay? But they're taught in medical school that serum analysis does everything you need. So it's called serum. Serum means blood, but they say serum analysis. So what they test for when they're testing your magnesium level is they simply do serum magnesium. Problem is, that doesn't tell you what you need to know, but they don't know that. So what you need to do, what everyone needs to do is get your vitamin D blood test done, And also ask your doctor to do a test called red blood cell magnesium, RBC mag, red blood cell magnesium, to know if you have enough magnesium for function, enough magnesium beyond what you need to break down your calcium. You need to actually go inside of a cell because magnesium is an intracellular mineral. Okay? The only thing it does in serum is it breaks down calcium. So once it goes into cells, it does something entirely different, 600 different functions. So red blood cell magnesium and a vitamin D test both, because they might come up short of vitamin D, but they may also come short of magnesium. And if they're short of magnesium, then taking thousands of milligrams of D is not going to make them better. They need to get their magnesium level up. So that's just a recommendation for everybody.
Perfect, Dr. Nugent. I want to thank you once again for your incredible and broad knowledge that you bless us with. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Dr. Nugent one more time for 2019 before we hit the big 2020. And that will be in December. We'll be covering ambertose. Dr. Nugent, have a great weekend. We thank everyone who is here. Next week is all about our amazing M5M Foundation with Sarah Louthan.